you're able to do. Send your spirit down again. Lord, won't you send revival? We need you in this land. Send your spirit down again. Just like in the upper room, we are the bride and you are the groom. Send your spirit down. That's it. Again. In this room today we say we are ready to go your way. Send your spirit down again. Say come like fire, come like rain, come like rivers, come like wind. Send your spirit down again. Come like fire, come like rain, come like rivers, come like wind. Send your spirit down again. One more time. Come like fire, Lord. Come. Somebody say again, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me in the comment section. It's a little bit of a technical issue here with my video, but if you can hear me, let me know while I try to get that sorted. Okay. Once again, just let me know that you guys can hear me loud and clear while we try to sort this out. We will get there. Good. All right. Good. So we've got some amazing guys in the house this morning. First of all, let someone know wherever you are. Send them a message. Share this on your social media profile, platforms, whatever it is. Let everybody know that we're about to go live. This is going to be a very, very seminal and important conversation. We can't wait to get started. So, good morning, guys. How are you doing? If you guys can take yourself off mute, let me know that you can hear all of you. Gerard, Chris, PK, Jamie.
Morning, PO.
Okay. So I can
Morning.
You know what? Let me, because I'm having a little bit of an issue with my studio here this morning. I don't
Morning.
know why. But I can hear you from here. Okay, so let's do it this way. Let us do it this way. Folks, you will see our faces in just a little while. Hold on, change is coming.
Say what you want. Have your way, how and when you want. Move through whom you want. We give it over to you. We give it over to you. Come on, don't stop, don't stop. Lift it up, lift it up. That sounds wonderful. Just lift up that pursuit. Come on, in your own words. A silent roar, a gentle roar. Come on, praise him.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you see me? Let me know.
Yeah, we can hear you. There's a bit of an echo. There's an echo actually. One, two. One, two.
All right, good. Let's go. Let's go. Jamie, can you hear me? Can we hear everybody else? Can we start now?
Okay, let's begin.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, PO.
Hello.
Okay,
And we're
good.
live.
Excellent. For some reason, I can't hear you guys. I know you can hear me, but I can't hear you, which is worrying. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? Everybody stretch your hands to the screen and shout fire.
Fire!
Okay, so the fact that you're stretching your hands means you can hear me. I just want to know why I can't hear you. All right, let's see. Let me try my earphones and see if that works. Okay, let's try this one more time.
Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me? Let me know. Well, I know
we
you
can
can hear
still
me,
hear
but
you.
you say something so I know if
Yeah.
I see if I can hear you.
Mic check. Live check. 1, 2.
And now I know I can't hear you because my speakers were off.
Okay.
I
can
feel
you
so
hear us now?
ashamed. Now I can hear you. Okay,
S-
there we go.
sound 101. Turn on the
Sound
on
101.
button.
Turn the speakers on. It's been crazy
On.
this morning. My computer just decided to crash, but it's okay. Literally, as we were starting, it just crashed. My camera went off and froze. It's been crazy. And in the true tradition of the superstitious church, we will say it means the devil doesn't want us to have today's meeting. That's why he's fighting it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So welcome everybody. We're sorry for the delay, but we're live now. We can all hear each other and see each other now. Everything's good, so you can let the people know that everything's cool. Male, female, you don't want to miss this conversation. Share this link right now. Do it right now. Share it to somebody. Call someone. Wake them up if they slept over since it was a Friday night. Well, I mean, overslept. Not slept over. They shouldn't be sleeping over. We're socially distancing. Amen. So,
Amen.
good stuff. I'm gonna ask everybody to introduce yourself one by one, leaving me out for now from clockwise, starting from Jamie. So just take a minute, tell the people who you are, what you do. I want you to introduce yourself as a human being. All right.
Okay.
Not so much as a member of a ministry or minister. Who are you as a human being? Take a minute or two. I want you to humanize yourself sufficiently that people want to hear what you have to say as a man. So, Jamie, shoot.
Okay. So my name is Jamie G. By profession, I'm a filmmaker, videographer, sound recordist, anything that's related to that kind of media. Um, I've been saved for nearly 15 years, and have made many mistakes prior to being saved, and many more since too. It's been quite a long journey. It's been a journey where I've gone through many different highs and lows, and have learned a lot along the way. Um, and so I look forward to sharing with you guys today.
Awesome. Awesome. So next would be Gerard.
Hi everyone. My name is Gerald. I'm human.
You're human. We hope so. We
um,
hope so.
yeah. So now I'm a student doing masters in Aston University. Um, been safe for a bit. Um, um, yeah, haven't been perfect all the way. With mistakes and still learning and growing. And I guess that's what we're here to talk about. So get to know more about me on a more human level.
Yes, sir. PK.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayode Olajide. I am a man. I, because these days you have to self-identify, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, a man. I am a child of God. I am a husband of one wife, one beautiful wife. I have a lovely son, a beautiful son who looks just like his father. I
If we
am
believe
a
your account.
musician. I have receipts, as they usually say. Musician. I dabble in many things. I'm a music architect. I'm a software architect. I love technology. I love movies. I love watching TV sometimes, not all the time. I just love talking about purpose, life, and journeys, and how we can discover ourselves and how we can become the best version of ourselves. And
Mm,
looking forward to this conversation.
awesome. Awesome. Chris. Chris is out of the stream. Let's. Okay, there you are. Okay, carry on, Jamie. Good.
Hello, guys. So, Chris. I'm also a human being. I'm a man. I identify as a man. I'm a biological man. Just to get that out of the way. Yeah.
Oh,
So, profession. I'm a software engineer. I'm a God lover, and I would say I'm a subject matter expert on making mistakes and coming out on the other side because of God. And I think Rev will be able
awesome.
to testify as well. He's had some insight into some of my earlier mistakes in my life. So I'm a God lover, and I'm excited to share my journey and the lessons that I learned along the way.
Mm, mm. Awesome. Awesome. Well, everybody, my name is Israel Olumide Isiavwe. I'm also a self-identified man. I'm also human. Although the word on the street is I might not be, but I think I am. My mom says I am. Um, I am a husband to the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name is Dr. Ajoke. You might have heard of her, Dr. Ajoke Israel Isiavwe. To some people, I'm her husband, and she's not just my wife, and I love it that way. I've got two amazing sons, Kadesh and Jeremy, 7 and 6, the joy of my life, my wrestling partners, my PAs, my debate contestants. Just living in my house is like being in a constant debate, questions and answers all day long. Outside being a minister and the leader of this amazing movement called Kingdom Culture, and the humble human vessel for Founding Heroes Men Community. I'm an investor, an executive and high performance coach, and an entrepreneur in quite a few other areas as well. So that's me. Yep, my babe's in the house today. That's Dr. Joke saying whoop whoop. So I'm glad to have this conversation. Now we're taking two. Was it 2 or 1 month we took off the Heroes monthly meeting?
1 month.
Just one. So we skipped the month just to chill, to rest, to refocus. For those of you who don't know, Hero is not just a Saturday event once a month. There's an entire community that's brewing. These are some of the guys who are leading that community. They've been putting together some amazing plans and laying out a vision for how we can build a supportive community of men who pursue destiny with Jesus as our North Star. And this is the first one we're having where, quote unquote, we don't have a guest, right? So there are no superstar guests here. These are just real men who, and the five of us do life together on a daily basis. So I'm not just quote unquote Rev Apostle to them. We are men. We talk. We gist. We argue about sports. We, right, guys? Don't leave me hanging.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my first question, or my first point of discussion to just humanize this is, and I want you to be honest. Can you tell the people, because I'm interested in finding out. Can you tell the people what it's like to be around me as a man? Speak the truth in love. Outside the title and the pulpit and the anointing and the office, what's Israel Olumide Isiavwe like as a guy?
Hmm.
What's our
That's
personal relationship like? One by one. I want to hear this.
um I'll give it a stab since I think everyone else is hesitating. So uh, um yeah, I would say how long have I known Pio? We've known each other since 2014,
12.
I believe. 12. Oh yeah,
Yep.
it was 12. That was when we first met. Yeah.
Yep.
And and then obviously since I joined the ministry, we've obviously developed a ministerial relationship, and then over time we've actually developed a personal relationship, and it's been, I would say Pio is definitely one of the most down to earth people that I know. Or rather,
Aw.
let me rephrase, one of the most down to earth pastors that I know.
Okay, so I'm
Um,
not one of the most down to earth people, just pastors. That's fine. Thanks for clarifying.
so because pastors don't tend to be down to earth, so and Pio definitely doesn't fit that mode. I remember I was I think it was a few weeks ago. I had some brothers round my place. And these were schoolmates of mine, and we were watching boxing. And then, we were watching the match, and then I was telling them, "Oh, I'm just typing to my pastor." Remember, I don't know if you remember, Pio. This was the Dillian White
Oh
match when
yeah,
he
I
lost,
remember.
and
I
then you
remember.
sent me a message. So I was with some guys, and then I was texting you, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm talking to Pio. I'm talking to my pastor about how Dylan needs to be humble." And and they were really shocked. They were like, "Wow, what you guys talk about boxing?"
Yep, we do.
And yeah, I was like, well, okay. So and that just shows the kind of person Pio is. And it's not just, it's like we have arguments and conversations, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times is arguments. And obviously Pio is is a man, so the male ego is definitely there, and Pio likes to win arguments,
I
as
do.
if you know him very well.
I do. Guilty as charged.
But yeah, no, it's yeah, I'm grateful for the relationship we have, Pio. You know.
Likewise. Likewise.
Um, for me, my experience with Pio is very interesting. I feel like he's almost like self-revealing one a lot of times because the more I spend time with him, the more I'm like, the more I see how much, the more I experience new sides of him. But when we started and when we met, was when I was just trying to piece my life back together. So, and my first experience with him was a pastor. And then I started experiencing him as a life coach, basically. I'll just have questions, things I'm confused about, young man relationship issues, what is this? And then and then he would come and he'd tell me some stuff and I'll be like, cool, and I'll see that it's as though he's gone ahead of me to experience some bruises. So
Mm.
I get to feed off his wisdom. And yeah, and he's a business mentor to me as well in terms of investments. And he's a very good teacher, I'll be honest. A good teacher, a good coach, and a patient one. And in class, we call him a nice man. So I think he's a nice man. I think he's a very nice man.
Yeah, I
That's it.
paid him a lot to say that, by the way, guys. So I'm going to need to raise an offering at the end of today so I can afford that compliment.
Yes, sir.
Jamie,
Yeah,
I want to hear. Okay, go on, Chris. Go on, Chris. Let's leave Jamie
I'll
till
go.
last so I can get my hat for what Jamie will throw at me.
Yeah, so I think my relationship with Pio started. I've known Pio for, I think it's over 10 years now.
Wow,
When it
that's good.
started, I kind of saw him as this pastor who was, very deep, way, living in the third heaven, somewhere there. And it evolved slowly the closer
Pio
that I
used to
got
live
to
in the
him.
third heavens. That's why.
Yeah, so the
I still
relationship
do.
definitely still do, but I just felt like there was a chasm, between, you and the normal human beings like us. But the relationship evolved. And I can honestly say Pio is definitely a great person. He's one of those people that he challenges you. You can't go to Pio with problems without actually presenting a solution. He's one of those people like he provokes me to become a better man. And earlier on, I can say a couple of years ago, a lot of the things that he kept hammering, I can see them now as I'm older. So, sometimes the difference between mothers and fathers is that fathers, you can see their wisdom in retrospect. It's not obvious. The benefit is not obvious immediately, but you always appreciate them in retrospect. And I can definitely say Pio has made a very big difference to my life. And yeah, that is my testimony of
Yeah.
Rev. Pio.
Love you, man. Jamie G.
So yeah, I've known Rev since 2015. It was actually when back in the days when it was called EKC, where I'm hiring out the church building that I was a part of at the time for a night vigil, and I sound engineered for that.
I was 14.
I think 2015. Yeah,
Okay,
because
okay.
at that time in 2014, I'd have been in the US.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So,
That's true. Yeah.
yeah, and we've come to know that we do have a common interest in media. But we also came to know, kind of along the way, that we don't always necessarily see eye
No,
to
we
eye
don't.
in that matter when it comes to media. If to be honest with you guys, like we have definitely argued relentlessly when it comes to this kind of thing. Even sometimes you're watching some of the services on a Sunday, and it may look like everything was great, but the things that were going on before the stream and sometimes even after the stream, you'd be like, how do these two even work together? But
Without killing each other.
yeah, but somehow we make it work, and like we do understand that we're going for it for a common goal, and I think that's what keeps us I think that's what kind of keeps us going, and that's why we still have that respect for one another. That doesn't go, that doesn't fade. And then as a person, it's like I can come to Rev with like a lot of the things that I think are just like serious issues that I need to sort out and everything. And then Rev will just be like, Jamie, it's really not that deep. Like, relax yourself. It is not that deep. You're going through what everyone goes through, and you're just in a growing process. You'll be fine. And you know what? I love that brutal honesty about him. He doesn't let me accept second best for my life. That's another thing I have to say about Rev. So, yeah, we argue, but at the same time, I love him to pieces.
Oh, literally sometimes to pieces, guys. Literally, as in literally to pieces. But yes, and I love you too, Jamie. But that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I was bracing for some horrible stuff from you guys. Now, in case anybody's wondering why I started off with that question, 3 reasons. First of all, I want you to understand the dynamic of this conversation. Because in the past we've had guests. Now they're my friends. Most of them are my covenant brothers, but they're guests. So they're men of God. They're people who you guys will look up to, and also there's the whole etiquette of having a guest. I want you guys to understand that this conversation we're about to have is between people who have. So Jamie is the person here I've known the least amount of time, and it's been 5 years. I've known Chris now for 12, I believe it is. I think you're the one I've known the longest. Our relationships have evolved from just spiritual leader to prodigy to as they have grown in their walks with God and also in their age as well. Uh, the, in my opinion, a good paternal relationship evolves into a son becoming a friend. I definitely have that with my biological father. My dad and I now, there's still the respect of he's my dad, but we can sit down, we can talk, we can joke, we can gist. You know, it's a sign of a good relationship, leadership relationship, when the person being led is allowed to evolve to being a friend. And each of these guys here are beyond just being people that I pastor and lead and cover spiritually. We, like you heard Pastor Kaide say, we argue about sports. Jamie and I are constantly fighting. If you could see behind the scenes of a church service, I mean, he's squeezing his face, I'm squeezing my face, we're texting each other. I'm like, if you don't change that, I'm walking off the set right now. He's like, go, bye. You know, and men need that. It's one of the problems I believe we have in our generation, where the moment you quote unquote ascend, you change your circle every time,
Mm.
to where you end up with a circle where no one can tell you the truth. No one knows you as a human being. Like Chris said, everybody sees you as a resident of the third heavens. And then when you make a first heaven mistake, your life is over, because people have built this unrealistic standard for you. And also you're living under pressure and anxiety. So that's number one. Number two is, I want you to understand that, like Chris said, he's made mistakes. They've all mentioned how they used to think I would. If they say they thought I lived in the third heavens and they don't think I lived anymore, it means they've seen my humanity, right? And I have been able to trust them with my humanity. Everybody needs people around you can trust with your humanity. And especially as you grow and rise in life, you will get to a point where the vast majority of the people who see you every day are people who you quote and unquote may lead. And so if you don't have that freedom, you'll just die. Let's move on. And thirdly, we're warning you in advance, this conversation is about to get wacky. So we just wanted to give you a preview of how it is when we talk. So I'm going to start with Pastor K of the boxing fame. What did you learn along the way as you became a man? 2 minutes. What are some of the things that you would, if you could go back and talk to your 19-year-old self, or better yet, your 16-year-old self, what have you learned now you wish you knew then?
Why did you start with me, Pio? That's
Because
starting
I was
with all
trying,
these
because I was trying to be
deep
mean.
questions. I thought you would ascend the hills, slowly. Um, ah, I mean, there's a couple of things really. Where do I start? I think probably the first one is it's okay to make mistakes. Um, because when I was 16, 17, I so let me just okay, so let me give a bit of a background to myself. So I got saved in my very early teenage years, and I was exposed to a lot of teaching, which is probably one of the reasons why I love teaching. And so I I I started learning about knowing what your purpose is. Does that make sense? And so for me, it was important to get so many things right. And it was almost like I grew up with a very religious mindset, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And so it was like if it wasn't this way, it was that way. If it wasn't this way, it was that way. And one of the things I've learned in life is it's not always it's not always
This way
black
or
and
that
white.
way.
Yeah. And there's something about perspective when you see things from different perspectives. And sometimes when you're looking at something, you're not always looking at something the same way. And so one of the things I struggled with was relationships with people because I felt like I was always right and everyone else was wrong. And so it was a journey for me personally to just learn all of those things that I know now. And I wish that at the times, I just wish someone taught me the importance of learning to see things from other people's perspective. So that was something I wish I learned very early. Um, should I continue
If
or
if
should
if,
I
if
carry
you
on?
if you wonder, there's anything else you want to add to that, that's fine. Go ahead.
So many things. I mean, uh, one of the things I wish someone taught me was the importance of managing your money.
Hmm.
I but I know I know sometimes we don't like to talk about these things, but yeah, I've made so many financial mistakes in my life. It's unreal. And when I think about it now, I wish that someone just sat me down and gave me a proper financial education.
Mm.
And I think that for us as men, some a part of our ego is tied to our finances. And if that's the case, then we should be very educated. We should have been educated properly about money.
Mm.
Um, Actually, yeah, let me stop because yeah,
You're
I
about to
could
get
carry on,
emotional.
Pio.
No, no, no. That is so true. That second one you mentioned is a real it's a real because we go to school and we learn everything in school except the three things that are the most important things to life. We don't learn about God in school. We don't
Mm,
learn about people in school, and we don't learn about money in school. Think about that. Formal education usually teaches you everything else but how to understand God, like you mentioned, how to understand people, aka see things from other people's perspective, and how to understand money. They teach you how to get a job, but they don't teach you how to create money or manage it or have to have a good relationship with it. Which is why rich people stay rich for generations and poor people stay poor for generations. But we digress. We digress. Chris, what would you tell 16-year-old Chris if you could go back and speak to him?
I guess this is probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over the last 10 years, the message of acceptance. I think I've always echoed it, even when I've had the opportunity to teach young people, whether it's Revive, which is part of KCM, shameless plug there.
Mm-hmm.
I always teach about
Tell,
acceptance,
tell
that
the
we
good
work.
people tell the good people what Revive is.
Revive is a youth and young people ministry, part of KCM, for young adults between the ages of 16 and 30 or in full-time education. Shameless plug there. But yeah, so I always echo the same message, the message of acceptance. For us to tell the 16-year-old Chris, it's one of the things that God has been teaching me, that we work from approval and not for approval. And I think in
Say that
my
again. Say
earlier
that again.
years,
No, 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 no,
we
no.
work.
Pause. You know the rules. You can't just drop a bomb and then move on. Clean up your mess. Say that again.
One of the things that I've been learning is that we work from approval and not for approval. And I believe that in my earlier years, everything I did was pretty much for approval. Even something as simple as teaching in the campus fellowship, I was doing it because I wanted people to accept me. Even when my last relationship ended about 5, 6, 7 years ago, it wasn't the fact that the relationship ended that hurt me. It was the fact that other people are not going to accept me because I failed at something. Everything I did was for acceptance. The job I picked was based on acceptance. I need to make enough money in order for people to see me as someone that is wealthy, that is important, that is significant, because I wanted acceptance. So if I was to tell the 16-year-old Chris anything, I'll tell them that you work from a position of approval.
Wow.
And this is the thing, is the root cause of it is because growing up not having a father, that's one of the things. You begin to look, because whenever there's a void of approval, you always seek it in other things:
Come on
job,
now.
relationships, finances, your preaching ability, your singing ability. You always look, you try to outsource to other people something only God can give you.
Say that
So for
again.
us,
mm,
Say that
we
again.
try to outsource, to people or things something that only God can give. And if I was to tell 16-year-old Chris, was make sure you fight, you pray, gear all your energy, focus, and attention to make sure you arrive at a place where your acceptance comes from something that is unchangeable. that is completely reliable, and that is God.
Wow.
There is so much freedom. There is so much freedom that so many areas. Obviously, it's something that I'm still working at, but there is so much freedom that I walk in because I don't do anything based on acceptance, and that is probably the biggest one of the biggest lessons that I've learned growing up. Yeah, that's me.
Wow. All right. I will. Okay. Cool. 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 Go on dropping them bombs. You will have to come and clean up your mess later on in this conversation. But okay, Gerard, what would you tell 16-year-old Gerard?
Well, if I also speak to the 16-year-old version of myself, I would say choose God early, take Him seriously. I don't feel
You
like
say that a
you're
bit louder.
missing
I'm
out
struggling
on
to hear you.
anything. Okay, if I was going to speak to a 16-year-old self of mine, of my 16-year-old version, I
Mm-hmm.
would say choose God early. Don't feel like you're missing out on the good things of life, and know that this would be the best choice you'll ever make. Because I grew up in an environment where people didn't really take God seriously, and I was really young, and I did also struggle with acceptance and the spirit of rejection. But one of the things that got me was that I always felt like I was missing out on things in life because when I was surrounded by people that had money, they had the social acceptance, they fit in a bit too much, you know. They had all the girls and all that, the drugs, the alcohol, and a lot of times I felt like it was painted as though the choice I made was putting me in a place where I was not living my fullest life. But that was a lie of the enemy because right now I'm seeing that wow, you know, I have I'm living a sound life because of the presence of God in my life. And that was something I did not really have while growing up. I really struggled academically. I was very horrible. I was when my primary school, I used to be like among the first three, but I was sexually abused at the age of 8. So after that experience, I started dropping to first 8, and then in my secondary school, I started dropping to last 10 and last 3. You know, so mentally, emotionally, I was just deteriorating. And if I could go talk to that guy, I'll tell him, dude, you need God, and if you
Mm,
expect him, take him seriously, and don't look around. Just keep looking at him. He's going to make
mm.
it. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned something just now, which I'm going to come back to in a second about sexual abuse, because we are going to talk about that today, because it's a taboo among men, isn't it? Men are not supposed to be sexually abused, are we? We're supposed to be strong and able to defend ourselves, and it's even worse if you were sexually abused by a woman because everybody assumes that you liked it or you wanted it or you know, for some. But we'll come there because that's my story too. So don't put a pin in that one for now. Jamie, 16-year-old Jamie, you can meet him down the streets in Paddington. What would you tell him other than don't try to walk through the wall to get on the Hogwarts Express?
Now, this is an interesting one because 16 was the year before I gave my life to Christ.
Can
So,
you take your volume up just a little bit?
yeah, sure. So 16 was the year before I gave my life to Christ. So I don't want to say the obvious one of God is real, but I think there are two major things that were holding me back at the age of 16, which I would really encourage people to like kind of take on. One of them was one of the things that really kind of led me to that kind of place that I was, because 16 was also the year that I tried to take my life. Is I was abandoned by my father just as I was going into my teenage years, and as the years spanned, I grew to become a very bitter, very angry kid. And I felt very alone. I felt very rejected. And but one thing I was very determined about was to never become like my father. If there's anything I'm going to become, it must not be like him. And in that determination of who I did not want to be like, I put no focus on what kind of person I did want to become.
Wow.
So
Wow.
instead of
Wow.
becoming that negative person, instead I become what I could describe as an empty vessel, because I was removing without putting anything in. The concept of positive role models was something I'd never heard of before. And let's face it, like when we look out into the world, it's like how many real positive role models of men are there? So yes, my dad vanished. And there wasn't really that positive man that made me believe in myself, that made me believe I could be more, that ever stepped into my life until way later. I'm talking years later. So I was an empty vessel. And so one major lesson there is don't be so caught up in what you don't want to be that
That's
you
good.
forget
That
to
is
actually
good.
pay attention of who you do want to become.
That
It's
is
like,
wonderful.
don't study the parable of the talents and focus so much on the one that the master rejected that you forget to pay attention onto the two that he accepted.
Boy.
Lesson number 2 is another thing that brought me to that place is that as a very, very, very young kid, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and that pretty much defined my life. And so I went through life with labels such as reject, retard, spastic, all that kind of stuff that you could name. Bullied by every single person in school pretty much throughout when school started, even in special education needs school, bullied there too, right up until the very end of school when I was 16. And used and manipulated by the kids around me too. And so those were all the labels that I had in my life, all the things that people said about me. And because I didn't counteract it, that's what I started to believe about myself, that all I'd ever be is a retard. All I'd ever be is a reject. No one is going to accept me. And so it wasn't until after I got saved that I started to change the things I'd say about myself. And I think it's fair to say I'm no longer autistic. I no longer have Asperger's syndrome. That's pretty obvious. I'm no longer a reject. I'm no longer neglected. That's pretty obvious. And so what's the lesson from there? Just because they said it about you doesn't mean it has to be you.
Troy.
Mic drop.
Can we share the grace now, guys?
Yeah, let's just
Oh, did you
go.
say
This
mic
was a
drop?
good session.
Yeah,
This was a good event. We can
That was a
go
good
home.
event. Let's just go home now. You know, I'm listening to you guys speak, and it's so interesting because if you asked me what I would tell my 16-year-old self, I would just, and I'm not joking. This isn't a cliche. I would literally repeat every single thing each one of you have said, because there is nothing you guys have said except for being diagnosed with a mental difficulty in my childhood. That's the only thing that isn't part of my story. And even though that didn't happen then, in my manhood, you guys have heard me talk frankly about my struggles with depression and what I believe was cyclothymia, mild version of bipolar, and other things of that nature. And I'm listening, thinking, I wish at 16 I could have watched this conversation. But let's go through them one by one. So Gerard mentioned sexual abuse. Now, no, you don't have to if you don't want to, guys. So, but if you want to, that's fine. Show of hands, how many of us have been sexually abused at some point in our life? So I know me, Gerard, you, anybody else? You don't need to say if you don't want to. Okay, so just the two of us. Let's talk about that, because the statistics say it's shockingly prevalent, far more prevalent than we would like, that young boys are being sexually abused. Sadly, in more than 50% of the cases, it's by another man. That has a destructive impact on a man's life. Ladies, let me explain. I know that sexual abuse is just as horrible with a woman as a man. I'm not comparing the negativity. I'm explaining the different ways in which it manifests. I've heard ladies explain to me, I'm not a woman, never been one. News flash. But I've heard it explained to me that it makes you feel violated, it makes you feel dirty, it makes you feel objectified, it makes you feel worthless, it makes you feel like someone has stolen something from you. That someone's asking where the offering basket is in the video description. You can give your offering there. Like where's the offering basket? Yeah, in the video description. Um, Makes you feel like someone's stolen something society told you was valuable that you should have been able to give, and those are horrible things. For a man, let me explain what it does. Society tells us we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be resilient, we're supposed to be protectors. When from a child you are told that someone could do something that violates your sense of masculine value and you are powerless to do anything about it. That emasculation that it does to the male psyche is deep. Now, any form of abuse does the same thing to a man. And that's what I want to talk about next. Because it doesn't have to be sexual. It can be verbal. I taught my sons early on that they had a right to speak and for their voices to be heard. And every so often, my son will say, Daddy, I have something to say. If I tell him, keep quiet, I'm on the phone or something, he'll say, but I want to say something. And every time he does that, I shut up. And I no matter how stressful or how silly I think it is, because I know what it is to verbally abuse a man, to tell a man your voice is not relevant. Of course, if you share my skin color, and you grew up in my generation, odds are that you went through a little bit of physical abuse in the name of discipline. you know, and the Bible does say, "Spare the rod, spoil the child," but there's a limit, there's a boundary, there's a line between loving correction and a parent, teacher, or authority figure taking out their frustration on you. I look back and I realize that sometimes a child was the recipient or the victim of a parent going through a bad day, or the parent was upset at the damage the child had caused by breaking an object and how they didn't have the money to replace it, not so much that they were trying to discipline their child to obey instructions. And it says something to that man. There's someone out there who's more powerful than you. They can impose their will on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Men like that grow one of two ways. For instance, when I heard when I heard you talk about how you were bullied, it makes sense now. Because in a positive way, Jamie walks through life, and I'm glad he does, with a subconscious mentality of I will not be bullied. Would you agree, Jamie?
Yep.
There
Definitely.
is this, you will not walk over me, and that is good because it is tempered by your walk with God. But when it goes to an extreme with people who don't have the privilege of a relationship with God, you do. It becomes violence and anger and destruction. They join gangs. They become violent criminals. That man is saying, the world wants to hurt me. I will strike first. Or they go into their shell and they become emasculated geldings. They become what we call, back in the country I grew up in, NFAs, no future ambitions. Women marry them and they get frustrated because they won't take charge. They won't step to the plate. They won't make anything of their lives because, again, they've told themselves, the world wants to hurt me. The best way to escape hurt is to not try and engage or do anything significant. So, in no particular order, can we talk about how you started to evolve? What seminal moment happened for you that changed these things, that got you on the path to healing, to freedom, to transformation? Anybody can go first.
Okay. It looks like everyone wants me to go first, even though you didn't say
Yeah.
anything. So, I'll I'll do it again. Yeah, Pio, you really touched something with this one. Um, it's interesting because I was having this same conversation with my wife recently, and as Pio suggested, I grew up in the typical household where discipline was a thing, and so you like Pastor Tuji was talking about in the comments,
Koboko.
koboko. And for anyone who doesn't know what that
Please,
is,
please tell the people what Koboko is.
yeah, koboko is it's an instrument of correction
Of deliverance.
well, I don't know if
Mechanical deliverance, as I call it.
mechanical deliverance that will inflict pain methodically to to reset you. Well, that was supposed to be the aim, but like Pio said, this a lot of it was actually abuse. If you think about it, it was physical abuse. And you know to be honest, we can't really blame our parents because they didn't know better. In their mind they thought they were doing what was best for us, but the truth of the matter is this thing actually damages you as a man. And for me, I didn't start to realize this until it was so much later. I started to realize how much of an impact it had on my mental health, even. And even just recently, I was having conversations with my wife and I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what, because what people don't realize is as men, and I'm gonna say something here that's gonna be slightly controversial. The male ego is a God-given gift to the man. And ladies, let me help you.
1 second, excuse me, sir. What's controversial about that?
That's what I want to
Well,
know.
because we've been made to believe, especially in the church, and the church has to take some responsibility for this, that the male ego is self, it needs to die, it needs to, and that was the kind of background I grew up in. And so it was like you're not supposed to, you're supposed to be humble, you're not supposed to have an ego. But what we don't realize is we're actually killing something that is core to a man's soul every time we inflict abuse on a young man. And so you the truth of the matter is it takes a while, it takes a long time, and sometimes people don't fully recover from the effect of the abuse. I know for me, I'm still on a journey because, like I said, I was still talking to my wife recently about this, and it got to a point where I started to cry, and I was like, why am I crying? I don't even understand what's going on here. And that's the journey that we have to go through as men. For me, it started with just accepting the fact that, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to actually be a man. It's okay to have a voice. It's okay to want to fight for yourself. Because, like Pio mentioned, there's two extremes that you go to. So I went to the other extreme where I became a shell of myself, and you naturally become timid. It's one of the things that happens. And I don't believe that being timid is of God. I believe that God wants us to be bold. The Bible talks about how the righteous is as bold as a lion. And so, some of the things that what people say is timidity, part of it is the physical abuse they endured while they were children, in the name of discipline, in the name of correction. And so what I've learned is there has to be a fine balance with these things. Um, for me, like I said, it's still an ongoing journey. It's it's just about meditation. It's about reprogramming your mind and just telling yourself who God says you are, and finding things that you can get into, exercising, learning, just whatever you need to do to reinforce that part of you that you lost as a child. You just have to do it. I'll let someone else carry on because this is getting emotional for me.
Who wants to take the baton? Gerard, you're on mute. If you're, in case you don't know, Gerard, you're mute.
Hello. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So for me, I would like to say, like, apart from the fact that I was sexually abused,
Can
before I
you be a
got
bit louder?
can you hear me better now?
A
Can
little
you hear me
bit.
better
A
now?
bit more would be good.
Okay, I'll talk louder. I'll just talk louder. I'll pull.
Better now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So for me, apart from the sexual abuse, what one of the things that really affected me was the inability to talk about it. So as a young man, I couldn't really tell neither my father, nor my mother, nor my siblings, this is what has happened to me. Before I start talking about the things I did to start experiencing redemption, it was that internal silence, that dying inside with something. And it was like, it affected me. I could have a normal friendship relationship with a girl because that thing had distorted my subconscious expectations when talking to them. You don't see them as a human being, you see them as an object. And you yourself, you don't even see yourself as man enough. You just see yourself as an you don't ha- it just twists your system inside out. And one of the things of the offshoot of the damage it did to my life was porn addiction. And this was why I said to myself, it was a self-righteous reason, not really a righteous reason. I said to myself, I cannot do to another girl what was done to me because I knew the damage it did to me. So I'll just deal with the damage myself.
Wow. Pause. 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 I've been preaching 20 years, mentoring about the same amount of time. I've dealt with hundreds of men with pornography addictions, seen several of them, over half of them, get delivered by God's power. I have never heard someone explain one of the reasons for porn addiction like that. And what you said just went boom in my head. Please say it again. I just learned something. Say it again, please.
I said to myself, the reason for my porn addiction was because I said to myself, I don't want to do to another girl what was done to me. I know the damage it caused. It was self-righteous. It wasn't truly the righteousness of God. But
So
that was my
let me interpret what I just heard you say in slightly different language. My first encounter with sexual intimacy was abusive or negative. The feeling is nice. What another human being did to me is horrible. So I'm going to find a way to enjoy that feeling without involving another human being.
yes. So I don't damage them. I don't give them that horrible feeling.
Guys, can you see how deep our psychology can be flawed or damaged by one encounter early on in life? Think about that. One encounter, one happening, one circumstance can make you a completely different human being than your clone would have been if they didn't have that encounter. That's just fascinating. I've never heard it said like that before. And I'm like, it makes sense. Carry on, carry on, carry on.
Well, yeah. So because of that feeling, that was why I would just carry on like that. And one of the things that also made that last was because the porn addiction now, I couldn't tell anybody about it because if you talk, it's a shit. It's sort of a thing of shame to talk about in a place you're expecting help from. But if you're with a bad guys, they'll be like, oh, you should be updated and all that. But yeah, but how God started helping me was, yeah, I think when I met with Pio, I could identify. I met someone that could. One thing that really drew me was I met someone that had told about his own story, and I could identify it with him. So that now made me feel like, okay, you can be led by this person. So through prayer and me searching for messages, I mean, I bumped into some messages that were just excessive about grace and all that. On studying the word, I started getting help from God and mental. But God really had to beg me, when he really had to beg me when he delivered me from porn addiction and all this. And see, don't go back to this kind of thing. He just begged me. See, you see what has happened to your life, literally, how your mind has been messed up over the years. This level of
1
damage.
second, sorry, you're cracking up. Can you say that again? That last statement again. You said God had to beg you. That's the last thing we heard.
Yeah, I said God had to beg me not to ever go back to that kind of life because
All right.
it reminded me of the damage that it did over a long span of years. I couldn't recover a lot of sane parts of my mind for years. My academic performance was messed up, and it's just till recently, not very long ago, that God started restoring that grace in my life. My mental capacity, the teacher could be talking, and I'm imagining them in a different light. It was just weird. The thing follows you everywhere you are.
Mm.
Like it's like a pest. You're like, get off. But it's just there. Someone is saying something, but you're thinking something else, and that's because of the experience. Concentration span is minimized. Focus is difficult. Clarity of thought and consciousness is hard. Sleeping as well is hard. By the grace of God, I didn't struggle with masturbation because I don't know. I felt like I could never do that. But I mean, it doesn't make me any better because I was still damaged, you know? And those were the things that made me to realize I need God. That's why God became my selling point because I realized you have an issue and you need God. And and that's what really made me. It was my problems that made me come close to God. Really, it wasn't because I really liked Him at first. It was because I was like, please, this place I'm in. And
Your
my family were dealing with my struggles, but they were not dealing with the reasons of my struggles. So while they could see the results, I couldn't talk to them about
okay.
the.
Pause. Gerard, sorry. I can't do it anymore because you're yes. Cha. You're. Let's process this slowly. Don't pause there, because you're saying so much, and I don't want people to. First of all, ladies, I hope you heard what this man just said. Now, I used to talk about this years ago. I think there's someone who's, if you've got two devices on, maybe you want to put one off or something. Somebody, I'm hearing an echo. But I used to have a demonic prophetic gift. And I thought it was just me until I started to counsel men in ministry. And I realized that 50% of all men have a demonic prophetic gift. Ladies, listen to me. We're not being legalistic. We're not being misogynistic. We're not, this is not, we're not blaming you for our stupidity or our issues or our lust. It's our fault. It's on us, not you. But you might just want to know that the average man on unregenerated by God, especially one who encountered perversion early, has the gift of X-ray vision. Let me repeat. He can picture you stark naked with frightening accuracy. Just want you to know. And like Gerard was saying, I used to struggle with that. I'd be in class and my teacher is teaching and I'm pleading the blood as a Christian. I'd be in church and a female preacher was preaching or leading worship, and I would get up and go to the bathroom or outside or wherever just because to get away from it and plead the blood. We're not saying that you should be responsible for our brokenness. But can you help a brother out with your behavior and sometimes your dressing? Again, it's our fault. Well and true. We acknowledge it's our fault. We acknowledge it's our problem. It's not yours. It's, if any, we get it. But as a good Christian sister, guys, I don't know if you agree with me. Some help would be nice. That's all.
Yeah, just a little.
If someone's an alcoholic, you don't walk around with vodka around them with the bottle open so they can smell it. It's the alcoholic's fault. We get it. If he beats you up to get the bottle from you, he should go to jail. We get it. The same way, if you're sexually abused, it's not your fault. That man should be dealt with. If you're sexually harassed at the workplace, it's not your fault. That man should be dealt with. And like I told you, you can wear sackcloth. You can potato skin cloth. You can wear burqa and a hijab at the same time, and some men are still so far gone that they will have a problem. So we get it. But for those of us who are on the borderline, and I say us not because I'm still there any longer, God gave me deliverance from that about 15, 16 years ago. But for those of us who are on the borderline, so we're not where we once were, but we're not where we will be. Just help us out. Just help us out. It's your right to wear what you want. We get it. It's your right to show as much clean. We understand it. But the Bible says if eating meat causes your brother to sin, don't eat the meat. Does that make sense? You won't go to hell for wearing that skirt or that top or that belt, I should call it. So some skirts are just belts. And it works the other way too, men. Hey, I've done this long enough to hear the ladies tell us that they too need help. Them skinny jeans. Come on, bruh. Everything sculpted and tight and hanging out. Are you hearing me, somebody? Women struggle with porn too. Are you hearing me? They're married women who are... Can we go there, guys? Can we go there, male and female? Can we go deep?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're correct.
There's married women whose husbands are not physically available to them. The man traveled for 3 weeks. And I found out ladies too have needs, right? So she's counting the days down till her husband comes back from the business trip. And the brother in God is at church on the pulpit singing worship and offering up his thighs. Okay, I'll keep it moving. Just saying that these things need to be said. So we're not being legalistic in the lines of, oh, you go to... No, we're just saying, why be part of a problem? Why be part of a lost culture? It's on TV, it's on Netflix, it's on the billboards. I remember a time when in Sheffield, to drive into Sheffield, there was a Marks and Spencer's billboard with a lady in green underwear at the entrance to the city. You couldn't drive past without seeing it. And I was like, this is demonic. And God says, no, it's not any more demonic than what goes on in church. Just say it. Let's keep it moving. So, Gerard, you were talking about how sexual perversion seeps into other areas of your life.
Yeah.
If a pastor said it on the pulpit, pastor's preaching. So I'm glad a real man is saying it. Do you guys know how many men have had their lives and destinies cut short because of an inability to control sexual urges? And we attack them as sexual perverts. But let's trace the root. Where did this start? What happened to this man at a formative part of his life? Same thing for women. But, Edward, look at me. Let's talk. Because I'm trying to say this nicely, but I don't care anymore. Male or female, this is a men's gathering, so I'm talking about it in the context of men. But the same thing holds true for a female child because they too can be damaged early on by things that happen. Can we stop bringing children into this world if we are not prepared to do the work to deliver them to adulthood as free of damage as possible? Can we stop conceiving children, male or female, that we don't have the spiritual or emotional or maturity capacity to fend for? And I don't mean provide nappies and milk. So when I wake up in the morning, I look at my sons, I can't be there every second of their life. I get it. But my primary assignment is to deliver them to adulthood as defect-free as possible.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid, if anything is going to wreck the life of that child, let it be something they did at an age old enough to be responsible for their decisions. But there are too many human beings walking the surface of the earth who society has cast out and castigated and looked down on and given up on. And if truth be told, that human being is just working out the natural consequence of things they could not control because someone either was not there or wasn't discerning enough or didn't have the maturity or capacity to protect that child. So see yourself as a store clerk. If you buy the TV and you smash it in your car, fine. But it's my job to make sure that we get that TV to your car in perfect working condition.
Mm.
Does that make sense? As a parent, it's our job. We are the store clerk designed to make sure that this item can be purchased in perfect working condition. Chris, over to you. How did you
I think I'll just
evolve
so I'll
out of
take
your...
So I think a lot of people have talked about, lust, porn addiction. That is definitely something that I dealt with for many years. So much so that I believed that it was impossible for me to be a Christian and to be free from this thing. I just have to manage this thing until I get married. And my deliverance was one conversation away. And I like how Gerald talked about not being able to speak, because I can definitely relate to that, is that I didn't feel like I could speak to anyone. So the paradox is that men do a lot of talking, but very little opening up. So men will talk about anything, sports, they'll argue, politics, but the level of opening up is very minimum. So one of the things that triggered my deliverance was being able to open up to another man. So whilst at university, campus fellowship pastor, preaching, teaching, quote unquote, mentoring people, I was still struggling with porn and masturbation. And I remember telling one of the pastors, and it took me a long time to muster up the confidence to be able to pick up my phone and to call them and to tell them I was struggling. I felt like they're going to judge me. So all these years you've been preaching and teaching, how could you do such a foolish... I had so much condemnation. I just felt like this was going to be the end of my journey with God. How can I serve God but simultaneously be struggling with sin? So my breakthrough came from opening up. We already know in the Bible, confess your sins to one another that they can be healing. A level of my healing came from being able to talk, to be able to open up about it. And I'd say that was the trigger. That was the beginning of the journey to my deliverance. I would like to say that I was one of those people that someone laid hands on me and the addiction was gone, just like that. But it was a process. And one of the things that I learned when I opened up to that person, they told me that, Chris, this is not actually the disease. Porn is actually the symptom. It's a symptom. You need to trace the root. What's actually going on? Is it a rejection complex? Is it, are you using porn and masturbation? Because it can be a type of paracetamol. It's a painkiller. You can face pressure, pain. You can have frustrations that can be mistranslated into sexual frustration. So you need to be able to, I learned about identifying the source of my frustration. And then through all of that, so my deliverance was very educational. So it wasn't just about removing the porn addiction or the masturbation addiction. It was about learning how to manage emotions, how to manage frustration, how to deal with rejection. And throughout that whole journey, I learned how to open up. I learned how to surrender how I'm feeling to God. I learned how to pray. I learned how to change the source or change the means of expressing frustration and not turning to porn and masturbation. But I'd say the key thing that triggered it was just being able to open up, having someone. Men talk a lot, but not a lot of opening up. So just having people that I can talk to. I also had a friend as well in Northampton that I was able to speak to. And it's not just about, one thing that I learned, it wasn't just about the porn and masturbation. It's about anything. I'll give you some example. I don't find my wife attractive. Who do you talk to? I feel stressed at my job. I feel like I'm financially incapable of providing for my house. Who do you talk to? So even though the deliverance was from porn and masturbation, the lessons that I learned through my journey of deliverance are some things that actually make you a great man. Being able to have, like David, you need to have a Jonathan, you need to have people that you cannot just talk, but people that you can be transparent and open to.
That Chris, that's so good. I can't remember who was this now. I know it was another pastor. It was a younger pastor. I can't remember who. Well, even if I can remember, I wouldn't tell you who they were. I'm just trying to picture the. Okay, I remember who it was now. But I was talking to a younger person in ministry, doing some great things for God recently, and we were talking about this same kind of stuff about a month ago. And I said to them, I said, make sure, because they're rising now. They're in a phase where God is beginning to make them prominent, and they're beginning to become seen as a leader in their generation. And I said, always make sure there are at least 3 or 4 people who you have regular contact with who don't refer to you by your title. Let me repeat. You need 3 to 4 people, usually 3 to 4 other men who are not your seniors, not your fathers, your mentors, your peers, who do not call you apostle, bishop, reverend, prophet, pastor, evangelist. Well, nobody calls themselves teacher Israel anymore, because we don't like those ones. We like the deep ones. And this is why. Pascali was talking about the male ego being God-given. It is. But just like every God-given thing, it can be corrupted. The corruption of the male ego, one of the ways it manifests as is competition. When men talk, we compare everything. Ladies, I'm not trying to be vulgar. I'm just telling you the truth. I grew up in boarding house, where you'd have a bath with 30, 40 other guys in a big shower room. I played competitive sports all my way through to university. I know I don't look it now, but I used to be a star athlete. And so again, we had communal showers. From the time boys are 10, they're comparing body parts. That's all I'm going to say. They're comparing body parts, and they are ridiculing people who don't measure up. Can I move on from there? Do you guys get the point? I don't want to have to break it down any further. And that carries on till when we're 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60. And so men don't talk about our struggles to each other because we are subconsciously conditioned to think the other guy is comparing himself to me. Why would I tell you about my deficiencies if we're in a race? If we're competing, why would I give you information about me that makes you feel better than me? It gets worse. So when men talk, not only don't we tell each other about what we're dealing with, our struggles. For instance, we don't tell each other about how broke we really are. We don't tell each other about how the fact that our marriages may be struggling, about how we're dealing with self-esteem issues, about how we may be great preachers but may be struggling with masturbation, of pornography, like some of the guys said that was my story. I've been preaching 20 years. I got delivered from sexual perversion about 15 and a half, almost 16 years ago. Do the math. That's all I'll say, right? So there was a time when God helped me, God forgive me. I was laying hands on people and going home to lay hands on myself. We don't talk about stuff like that. But worse, we embellish the stuff we talk about. So, you sit down in a pastor's green room and a husband says, yeah, we have 5,000 people in our church now. The wife will correct him and say, no, honey, it's 4,200. Because women are wired to be real. Sometimes to their detriment, because they're real to the wrong person. But we always want to embellish. So what was your turnover last year? Oh yeah, we made we made $1 million last year in our business. Well, technically you made 830,000, but $1 million sounds better, doesn't it? It's more masculine, ego competitive. And so you walk into a room where not only is the other guy not telling you about what he's struggling with, he's embellishing what he does have. He's making himself feel better or look better than he actually is. You don't want to be the weak link. You don't want to be the idiot. You don't want to be the, the black sheep, the runt of the litter. And so we get into this cyclical, egotistical, competitive streak until one person crashes. And then to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, we then attack that person that crashed. The first person who blows up out of the suppression of deficiencies and feeling like they're inferior to everybody else, when that person does something crazy or stupid, we feel better about ourselves, because if everybody's talking about the guy who ran away with his secretary, I can tell my wife, look at that guy, horrible guy. He left his family and ran away with the secretary. Subconsciously, I'm saying to my wife, I know I may be physically abusing you, and I don't abuse my wife. I know I may be verbally insensitive to your needs. I know I may be a horrible husband, but here's a guy who's actually worse than me. You guys get it, right? So, honey, here's a guy who's actually sleeping with his secretary and then ran away and left his wife and children. So I'm an angel. You should love me. I mean, I'm beating you, I'm verbally abusing you, I'm insensitive to your needs, but what a man I am, because here is another man who is a demon and I'm not. We need to break that cycle, folks. Deliverance is usually one conversation away, like Chris said. Same thing too. My freedom from sexual perversion started with one conversation with somebody who I thought would judge me, and he wrote on a piece of paper. I copied it from him. His name was Pastor Sam Radford. He was the assistant pastor of the church that I was in about 15, 16 years ago. And I was a youth leader in the church. I was on my way to becoming ordained as a youth pastor. I was a role model and everything, and I was struggling with masturbation and pornography. And one day God said, tell him. And so I was sure that he was the assistant pastor. So I was sure I was going to be removed from my place of service. I was sure I was going to be told that you're a danger to people, you can't minister to them. And when I told him I had something, I said, Sam, I've got something to say to you that's going to make you change the way you see me. Sam said, stop. Then my name was OJ. He said, OJ, stop. He said, before you tell me what you're about to say, he wrote on a piece of paper something and covered it. And he says, whatever you say to me, my answer will be what's on this sheet of paper. And so I rambled on for an hour about how I was not worthy of God, and, I was a disgrace, and I would be okay if, you took me off. And after a while, Sam just got fed up and said, OJ, shut up. Literally screamed, shut up. And he picked up the piece of paper, and on it were written the words, big deal. Sarcastically. Meaning, so you're struggling with masturbation and pornography. Okay, join, not him at the time, but join the club of 80% of all men who've lived at some point. I'm like, okay. A few weeks later, I was free. We need to create safe spaces for men to talk and be who we are as other men, and even as the women who love us. Wife, your husband will gravitate to the one woman in his life with whom he can be himself. If it's your mother-in-law, she'll run your home. If it's another woman, he'll be unfaithful. Don't argue or fight with the other women in his life. Be the space where he is the most free to be himself, and he'll gravitate towards you. Jamie, over to you.
Okay. I have no idea how to even pick up on that. I'm going to go into a slightly different topic, if that's all right.
Go on.
So I'm going to talk about like my personal deliverance from Asperger's syndrome, actually. And because you're taught when you've got something like that to just kind of accept that that's just a part of who you are. That's just kind of how you're going to live. You just got to learn to work with it and all that kind of thing. But it also kind of gives you, the person who has it, that sort of expectation that people around you would have that understanding. And that's really not the case. So whilst I was in sixth form college, this was about a year into being saved. So one of the other guys, he was really annoying me. And so just out of the blue, without even realizing it, without even seeing it coming, I punched him in the face. And I was just shocked. And the only thing I could do was leave because I just didn't know how to even respond to what I just did. And so I just made my way home. And this wasn't in sixth form college, by the way, if you're wondering how nothing transpired from that. I got home and I was like, right, I am not going to leave the house for a good week until I kind of figure out what's going on here. And then I was praying, and then God was like, started to impress on my heart at that point. Yeah, that whole Asperger syndrome thing, you know that's not supposed to be you, right? And it was difficult at the time because I was at a church where not a lot of people came from a place of struggle. Not a lot of people came from a place of serious strongholds. You know, the typical person got saved as a child, pretty much grew up in a Christian home and all this kind of thing. So when you explain your past, you explain your struggles, you normally either get the response saying, wow, I wish I had a testimony like that. Or the other response would be like, yeah, but you know, that's all in the past now. I'm like, okay, cheers guys, but that's not really what I need right now. So literally all I had was the Bible and like external sermons or teachings that I could find online. At the time, finding things online wasn't quite as easy as it is now. So I started practicing a few of the things I learned of declaring myself healed, saying Asperger syndrome is no longer a part of me. God said, why do you want to get healed? And I said, why should I expect people around me to actually tiptoe around these struggles that I have? But if I still have these struggles and people don't tiptoe around me, I will find myself reacting. So I've got two options. Either I can carry on with that expectation, or I can deal with this whole Asperger syndrome problem. And then no longer do people need to, be careful what they say around me or walk on eggshells around me. No longer do people need to adhere to my obsessive compulsive nature and all this kind of thing. Instead, I can accept them for who they are and still be me and still very much be in control of who I am. And so 6 months of just declaring that over myself again and again in prayer, saying, in Jesus' name, I am healed. In Jesus' name, I am no longer autistic. In Jesus' name, this is no longer my struggle. And I was just noticing the symptoms just dropping off one by one until I was no longer swearing. Not a single swear word came out of my mouth. And bear in mind that my language was so bad that even as a Christian, unbelievers thought that my language was appalling. Unbelievers who were teenagers, unbelievers who were at my college, what students are like, and they thought my language was appalling. So that's how bad that was. And just generally, my understanding for people started going up. I started developing more empathetic skills. I started seeing things at other people's point of view. And by the way, if you're autistic, that's impossible. You can only see things in your own narrow-minded kind of way when you're autistic. That's the only possible way. So I knew I was healed. People tried to tell me I just learned to manage the symptoms. But let me tell you, I know the difference between managing your symptoms and there being no symptoms to manage. So it was that point where it's like, where are you going to take responsibility for your transformation? And I did.
Wow. Responsibility. It's a word that is always associated with men, and a word that many of us, truth be told, don't understand. Responsibility comes from two words: responsibility. It's the ability to respond to a circumstance from a position of responsibility. It means I can respond to a circumstance not as a victim, but as someone who's in control. Jamie, that's powerful.
I used to have a pastor that called it responding ability.
Responding ability.
Nice.
Yeah. Jamie, that's powerful. And again, I can relate. Maybe not with Asperger's, autism, but with mental health struggle, I can relate. In my own life, my own walk. I can also relate with my son, who was told he would be autistic. And I keep telling the story. The last person who saw him before the NHS system finally discharged him from their attempts to put him on the autism spectrum said to me that there was something written on his file they were worried about. I said, what? And she read to me that his NHS log said, father gets aggressive when he thinks son is being labeled. Be very careful. She was like, do I want her to try and get it off the log? I said, no, leave it there. I'm very, very happy with that, because I didn't have a father to be aggressive when the world was trying to brand me. I remember the day God healed me from, because I was talking to someone a few days ago, my entire life walk and assignment in ministry has been trying to give people what I didn't have biologically, what I didn't have spiritually. I've always tried to be, I've not always succeeded. I'm a human being. I have fallings or failings, but I've always tried to be that father, that leader, that covering, that coach, that cheerleader, that fan that I never had. And like, was it Pastor K or who said that? Jamie, that sometimes when you try not to be something, you end up becoming nothing. And it took me a while to figure out that was what was happening to me. My prism for what I wanted to be was more not being what I had than intentionally defining what I wanted to be. That's for next month. Come back.
That's actually
That's for next month. But I remember I was about 20 years old at the time. I was having a conversation with my father, my biological dad. By this time, our relationship had been, I'd started living with him and we'd formed a relationship. And I told my dad of something that happened when I was in high school. To the glory of God, all honor and all credit to him. The couple of people who are online now who actually are alumni of my high school, they went there after I left. I'm still humbly, I say this with humility, I'm kind of like a living legend in my high school. My name's on the wall in the center of the school. I travel around the world. People stop me in airports and say, "Are you?" And they call me senior so and so, because that's what they would call you in school. Some of them were not born when I left. But something happened in high school that scarred me. I was older than 20. I was about 23 or 24. It was into my 20s when I got some level of deliverance from it. Going into the final year, into the sixth quote-unquote form, we called it SS3 in Nigeria. They were picking prefects for school. Who was going to be the senior prefect, the head boy, the head girl, this kind of stuff. And there was a natural expectation that I was going to be either the head boy or at least the assistant head boy. There was one other guy in my set who everybody thought one of the two of us would be the head boy. And there was a particular teacher who treated me like a son. And most of the other teachers had a problem with him. He had a quite abrasive personality. He wasn't your average person. In hindsight, I now realize, and he was a brilliant man, or he is a brilliant man, spectacular. If I were to call 10 people who God has used to change my life, he'd be on that top 10 list. The 10 most influential people in my destiny, he's in the top half of that list. But he probably was a highly functioning, probably struggled with some of the mental health issues I did later on. So he was very abrasive, with high functioning, very intelligent. And he had some of the teachers who ran the school, the inner circle, didn't like him. And I think almost to punish me, punish him, they picked on me. There's a day in which, every year, there was a day in which they would call the top 2 candidates for the senior prefect position. It was like a culture into a meeting with the principal and the rest of the school and the rest of the teachers, the staff meeting. It was almost like, okay, these are the top 2 or 3. Let's interview them. Let's find out who is who. Because many times the principal wouldn't even know us because he only ever really dealt with the top class students. Now, I didn't realize at the time, but they must have told the other guy what was happening. Now, in school, I was small anyway. I had a growth spurt in my final year in high school. I grew from about 5'5" to 5'9", 5'10" in my final year in high school. Otherwise, I would have turned out quite tiny. But the growth spurt was halfway on the way. So I was no longer the shortest guy in the class, but I wasn't the tallest by any stretch. But I wasn't that tiny. But they told the principal, he told me later, that this guy being proposed is very tiny, very small, and that while he's the most intelligent guy in the class, he has mental issues, that he's studied so much that he's a bit touchy, to try and denigrate me. And so they obviously had told my friend that this was the day the principal was going to be seeing us. And I had this pair of sandals, because we child abuse. They made us wear a shirt, a tie, trousers, white socks, and brown sandals. I mean, I want to know who came up with that school uniform, but that was that was our school uniform. You guys are laughing. You know what I'm talking about, right? And baggy trousers, yes, you get it, right? And a khaki shirt with a tie. My sandals were quite high because I'd been wearing them from the year before when I was the shortest guy in the class. So even though I was now midway through my growth spurt, I had very high sandals, and they made me even taller than I was. So they made me pretty much as tall as everybody else. This guy asked to swap sandals with me that day. And his were flat. Now I know it was a setup. I didn't know then. So we get told with 1 minute notice, the principal wants to see you and you. The other you is in another class. I don't have the time to get my sandals from him. So I show up in the meeting. He's already taller than me normally. I show up in the meeting with flat sandals. He has my skyscrapers. So he's about 1.5 inches taller than me already. He now looks almost 5 inches taller than me. And the principal said something in a language called Yoruba. He says, Baba Kukuru. It means midget. And we walked out. The next week, I found out that not only was I not going to be the head boy or the assistant head boy, I was off the prefect list altogether. I wasn't going to be made a prefect at all. Now, this, in hindsight, it seems silly. But when you're a teenager, it's a big deal. I felt ashamed. I felt demeaned. I kept hearing Baba Kukuru over and over and over again. And then my teacher, the teacher who was like a father figure to me, then told me what had happened and how some people had made the point that, one, not only was I tiny, secondly, I was basically a mental case. I had mental issues. And growing up in Nigeria at that time, it was a stigma. Mental health was a stigma. Cut long story short, there was a little bit of a mutiny in school. Some teachers banded together. Some students, went on whatever. I was put back on the prefect list. I was made the third prefect in charge. So I couldn't be the head boy, the assistant head boy any longer, because by the time you were chosen to be head boy, assistant head boy, your parents would be informed. That information had already gone out. And so they brought me back into the list as the number 3. I didn't find out till the day everybody was announced. The guy who was supposed to replace me on the list had now borrowed my tie clip. It's interesting. He'd borrowed my tie clip for his inauguration. When my name was called, he was shocked. I was shocked. But that stayed with me till I was in my mid-20s. And I'm going to end today's conversation by telling you how I got healed. I told the story to my biological father at 23 years old. We were driving down the road. We were going from, I believe we were going from London to Norwich or Sheffield to London, somewhere like that. He'd come to, one of us had come to visit the other and was, whatever. And my dad almost crashed the car. My dad screamed and said, how dare they talk about my son like that? And my dad was ready to drive to Heathrow, get on the plane, go to Nigeria, and go and beat people for something they did almost a decade or more ago. And as crazy as that sounds, that brought me healing. I thought, okay, someone wants to defend me. There's actually a human being who loves me enough to see me being mistreated and say no. Even if it was a decade ago. Or almost, not quite, almost a decade ago. Or maybe, I don't know, some time ago. I'm doing the math, right? You get the point, right, guys? The same thing happened last year when I told my father, 2 years ago, when I told my father for the first time I was sexually abused as a child. He never read my book. He didn't know about it. I told him 2 years ago. This time, instead of anger, he broke down almost in tears and kept apologizing to me and saying, I wish I was there. I wish I was there to defend you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish I could have done something about it. And again, now I'm not 24 and I'm a grown man, wife, children, leader, whatever. And watching another man say it was my job to defend you. If I had been there, I would have killed that person. Again, brought me freedom. And I want to end this today with this question, because I think we might be coming back next month. For those of us fathers or men now who are now fathers, either biologically or spiritually, husbands, meaning we're protectors of wives and women, just men in society, meaning we're responsible, we're supposed to guard humanity. Who can we protect or inform that it was our job to have protected that could bring healing? Who needs us to say, you're my responsibility, in the ways we didn't have anybody to be responsible for us? Which young man is punching someone in school like Jamie did, who's about to be excluded from the school, who just needs a teacher or a male father figure to step up and say, you know what? It's not fair what you've had to go through. I'm going to cover you. I'm going to take responsibility for you. Like Jamie said, he told God, I need to heal. Not just for my personal benefit. I need to heal because other people around me are going to be negatively impacted by my dysfunction. That was my motivation towards my own freedom journey. And you guys know the story. I've preached about it several times, written a book about it and everything. I wrote in my book dedication, I said to my sons, Kadesh and Jeremy, I said, my motivation for my freedom was because you deserved a father that was whole. I can't do anything about what happened to me, but I don't want you to have to deal with the effect of a father who is dysfunctional, is broken. So man, young man, old man, brother, son, father, who in the future needs you to heal so that they don't get broken? And perhaps that is the motivation you need. Who should you be telling your story as we're telling now, from a place of healing and wholeness, and not them finding out about your story because of the disgusting effect your brokenness is having on them? Does anybody have anything to say to that before we start to wrap up?
I don't have much to say. I too had my experience with mental health and being in the mental hospital for like 6 weeks. And I don't think we have the time to deal with that story. About 2 years. But I think, to be honest, I think everyone on this conversation actually has a thank you to say to Pio, because a lot of us are better men because you decided to be part of our lives. So thank you, Pio, for fighting your battles and bringing us into your victory. Yeah.
Thank you for the privilege to be a part of your lives. It means a lot. All right, guys. In the absence of any more conversation, this is feels like a strange place to leave the conversation, but I feel like anything else we say after this will water down the effect of what we just said. We're going to be back next month for pretty much a part two of this, unless something comes up that's different in the spirit. But we're going to pick this up. We're going to see if we can get a couple of the other men who are part of the hero community to join the conversation as well. We would love to hear about how this has impacted you. So if we could just put the details on the screen. First of all, if you want to write to me personally about something that you're dealing with as a man, and how we can be there for you as part of the hero community, maybe assign you to someone or minister to you. That's my personal direct email at the bottom of the screen. So nobody else sees that but me. So I would like you to let me know how we as a community of men can be there for you. And that even if you're a woman and you're worried about a son or a husband or spouse, a father, write in. We want to hear from you as well. We are making plans, quite advanced plans for the hero community, where beyond this monthly gathering online on YouTube, we want to have close quarter YouTube, Zoom forums that are just for men, just so we can be real and be there for each other, and meetups. And we were hoping that if we'd done what we should have done and this virus was under control by now and we hadn't been stupid as a population, that we would be able to meet up physically. But we reap what we sow, and so we're gonna have to keep it on Zoom for a while. But once we can get in each other's space physically, we want to play football together, go bowling together, do stuff together, just do life together as men, and be there for each other. Discuss finance and sex and marriage and all the other things that are important to a man's life. Finally, if you want to be a part of supporting this initiative, the details of how you can give are in the video description below, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And we would be grateful if you would consider sewing, and just type hero in the description. And so we know that money is specifically to be used towards the hero men's community. Final words, 30 seconds each, guys, before we run. Say bye to the people. Say what's on your heart that you wish you had said while you were talking, and then we'll wrap up.
All right, I'll start
As
again. It's
usual.
like I always have to start. I think the one thing that just really comes to my mind, especially when Pio rounded up, was the phrase that came to my mind was the journey of personal responsibility. The truth is, all of us as men, we've all undergone, we've all gone through different experiences, but there is one thing that we all have in common, which is the fact that all of us have to go on a journey of taking responsibility for our growth, taking responsibility for making sure that the things that we went through, the generation coming after us, they don't have to go through. And, as a man or even as a woman, if you're not on that journey, it's important for you to jump into that ship now. And that means that no matter what happened in our past, you have the capacity and you have the Spirit of God on the inside of you to change the destiny of your future. And that means that there are things we all can begin to do now to fix things that were warped in the past. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And maybe some of the things that we could talk about in the next session are those things, because I
Great
know we can't
idea.
exhaust them now.
I concur. Chris?
Yeah, I think my closing remarks are just, I think you rightfully say dysfunction breeds dysfunction. And the responsibility of bringing men to where they should be is not just men holding other men accountable, but it's mothers holding their sons accountable. It's wives holding their husbands accountable. It's a process that every person needs to take responsibility for because it affects everyone. So don't just think that what's going on with men, that's for the men to deal with. As a body of Christ, it's something that should be attacked from every angle. And yeah, I'm excited about what's going on in this ministry. It's a journey that's not just going to affect the men in this ministry, but we want to take this to the world because the men need it, the women need it, sons, daughters need it, the world need it.
Amen.
Yeah, that's me.
Jamie?
Yeah, so obviously one of the things we spoke about was taking responsibility and just doing more, but don't let that kind of put an unnecessary pressure on your life. Always remember, God's got you and you've got this.
Come on now.
That's it for me.
Gerald?
I don't have as much of a closing remark as I think everything has really been said. But I'll just say like a 5-10 second prayer if that's okay.
Go on.
I pray that any man or woman listening to this will find grace to deal with life and the mess of existing that comes with existing. I pray that you will find confidence to speak to, that will not abuse you or take advantage of you, but that will listen to you and help you. I pray that you find armor bearers, people that will hold your hand up in life and lead you in the right direction. I pray that you find the right kind of community, friends and people that will lead you to form the right relationship and the right community to have the kind of life you're meant to have. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And I have absolutely nothing to add to that. Bless you guys. See you next month. The Hero Men's Gathering next month. 1 second, someone's feeding back. Who is that person? All right. The Heroes Men's Gathering next month is on what the world calls Halloween Day. We're going to be here, right? Holding it down for Jesus. Amen. Shutting down the heavens for the enemy as men taking our place. So it's going to be the 31st of October, 11:45 as usual. And the plan is to carry on this conversation and start to talk, like Pastor K just mentioned, about the process of responsibility to build a man from the ashes of the circumstances he was born into. Love you guys. Thank you to everybody who's been around. Again, if you want to give, details are below in the video. If you want to write in about stuff you want to talk about or give a testimony or ask for help, my email address is on the screen. To Jamie and Chris and Gerard and Pastor Kayode, love you guys. See some of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Love you guys too.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in.
Come on, we your name. I lift you. We lift you. I lift you. We lift you. We lift you. Oh, we lift your name up. We lift your name up. We lift your name up. Come on. We lift your name. Come on, lift it. Come on, in your own words. In your own words. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We lift your name. Shout out to God. Shout out to God. Shout out to God. Yeah. We lift your name up. That's it. Shout out. Shout out. We shout. We lift your name up. Come on, lift his name up. What's the thing say? Come on, church, lift his name up. Come on, in your own words, lift his name up. Lift his name up. We lift your name. Come on, lift his name up, everybody. Come on, lift it up, lift it up, lift it up tonight. In your own words, come on, that's it. Come on, that's it. Shandoro Biosaya. Oh, for the last time, we lift your name up. We lift your name up. We lift your name up. We lift your name. We lift your name up. We lift your name up. Say we lift your name up. Shout. Come on, shout. Thank you. Abba. Welcome to Face, everybody. Look at the neighbor.